Deleted Session, November 26, 1979. Good evening. Now, your questions about the operation of Framework 2 seem certainly to be simple, straightforward questions, answerable in 3 or 4 or 5 pithy paragraphs. And of course, I will try to give you a straightforward reply. Behind your questions, however, there lies a vast area of unasked questions that we have barely touched upon. In dealing with frameworks 1 and 2 alone, I have been simplifying, and those frameworks in a way represent dimensions of events. How events happen is perhaps one of the greatest mysteries that you will encounter in physical life. Often, I don't need analogies, for to me, that simultaneous creative, cooperative nature of events exists with a sublime simplicity. A simplicity I am afraid that of necessity becomes complex as I try to describe it in terms that will make sense in your space-time framework. All of our analogies taken together, you see, only hint at the true picture. But if I cannot describe clearly to you in your terms the interaction between framework 1 and 2, then we will have difficulty with other later material. So we will try again this way. Begin with the idea of a book. That idea alone instantly mobilizes, say, Ruber's abilities, and the same applies to any writer. There is only one person involved. The same applies to an artist. So, for simplicity's sake, we will start with a single creative event. The idea the writer or artist has already geared himself through training and practice, through intent and expectation, to receive to begin with. Without consciously knowing how his body performs such manipulations, he trusts it. The hands to hold the brush, the fingers to type or whatever, and the idea becomes reality. The idea comes from Framework 2, and Framework 2's activity fuels the body's actions. Now, we want to publish the book, and I will here continue. For our purposes, dealing with a book's production rather than a painting's. Still, however, we will keep the idea of a painting for a different reason. Now, think of the book's production and everything connected with it as being part of the same kind of creative activity, but in an arena where events as you think of them become the medium. It is as if, forgive the crossing analogies, the production of the book is transferred to another level, a living peoplescape in which each person who plays a part in that book's production now joins the creative act at this secondary level as far as you are concerned. This is their primary level, however, for it is when they enter the picture. Certain things at this point are already set. Say, you already have a publishing house, and the particular people are involved whether or not you know them. Again, I am fitting the discussion to your specifications. Your reality and the reality of those people exist primarily in Framework 1. Already in Framework 2, decisions beyond number have occurred. Computations beyond number have been made, resulting in this particular reference frame of probabilities existing at the time. In one way or another, they are connections uniting everyone involved in such processes. There are reasons beyond business that make the people apprentice involved with books rather than, say, toy or other even more profitable ventures. The artistic act always directly involves strong direct interactions with Framework 2. In the production of our book, we want, say, people we may not even know to come together in certain fashions to make certain decisions that will be in direct agreement with our own creative intent. They each have their own lives and their own interests and intents, their own problems. We cannot move them around like toy people on a game board. When you continue to think of events, and publishing is one, as multidimensional creativity, involving many people instead of one, then you have some leverage to help you understand. In Framework 2, each person is connected to each other person. I have given you a good deal of material explaining how information is communicated both on a cellular basis and on a mental one, how it is communicated through the dream state, and I have explained the importance of impulses as direct nudges from Framework 2. This is still very difficult to verbalize. The main driving, clear, emotional intent in such a project is the author's. The book is his baby. Remember, we are dealing with emotional intensities, and it is because of emotional intensities that our books are in so many homes. That intensity has its own force and vitality. Ram noted, I think Seth inserted his remark about the books being in so many homes because our mail has rather strikingly reminded us lately of that fact. We've been talking about it. She said, ideally, that force is to a large extent self-protective. It is also perceived to whatever degree possible by all those apprentices who are involved. At Framework 2 levels, those people want to produce an excellent book. Their desire is not as vigorous as yours. It is watered down by far more Framework 1 activity. There is much static at that level. Now, when you concentrate mainly in Framework 1 and its communications with apprentices, then, while overall you do achieve results of a beneficial nature, the publication and distribution of the books in a largely adequate form, there are glaring discrepancies also, entanglements that you do not like because you have taken your intent from Framework 2, where the creative event began, and placed it into Framework 1's communication system almost entirely. Obviously, you need Framework 1 with its letters, telephone calls, and so forth. But Framework 1's communication system, while physically handy, also is somewhat like a very poor telephone connection, with static at both ends. You reach each person you want separately. You must make your message clear regardless of the other person's needs or circumstances, intents of the moment, and so forth. The more harassed you become, the more the static increases at both ends. Now, Framework 2's communications system is set into motion as a primary rather than as a backup system of communications. When you learn to cut through the static, if you trust the system of communication, this is how it works. First of all, you clear your wires by trying to clear your mind, and simply by trying to understand how Framework 2 works. You think of, say, any event in a book's production, distribution, translation, or whatever, as the kind of multidimensional creative effort, and the event I have tried to explain. All of those other people are connected to that event in Framework 2 on a non-physical level, as they are connected on a physical level. Framework 2's communication system is at once simpler and more complex than Framework 1's. Just as, say, your intent to paint a picture automatically has your fingers all moving in the proper directions, and your body manipulating properly, so that the desired painting results. So, in a larger fashion, your clear intent is communicated to each of the people involved, at a level without static, yours or theirs. They do not then move as faithfully as your fingers, following your own intent, not theirs, but everyone involved cooperatively agrees to aid that creative venture, not only because you want it, you see, but because for their own reasons they are involved in book publishing and want to play a part in that kind of activity. You set a far more favorable group of probabilities into motion, a group that aids you and them as well, for they are also seeking creativity from their separate viewpoints. They are also fighting their own static. You do not have to contact them one by one in Framework 2. The book itself is like a magnet. Any book. The same kinds of reactions, however, are involved in all activities, and it is sometimes frustrating for me that you cannot perceive the fascinating facets of any event. All group interactions, of course, are involved here. You still, and I do not simply mean you two alone, do not feel the unsurpassable force that thoughts have. You do not understand that they do form events, that to change events you must first change thoughts. You get what you concentrate upon. To brood or worry or become resentful is as regrettable as it would be if you, say, painted a big X over one of your paintings, because you were dissatisfied with a detail or two. Over a period of time, resentments X out large areas of otherwise productive experience. Give us a moment. When you have fearful thoughts about a book, or worse, about a future book, then you feed other people's static. You increase to some extent their doubts as well as your own. Your doubts have reality. But behind that statement is the apparently unrecognizable truth that your physical world is the exteriorization of your thoughts. Mankind's most majestic experiences and his most unfortunate still come from that same great creative force. I have been very careful in my use of the word love, because it is so bandied about and distorted. But all creativity and any work of art and any life springs from love, a love that automatically brings all things into their own kinds of order. The artist paints because he loves to. His brain and fingers are able to produce a painting because they are themselves formed of love. I am not speaking of some cold, idealized love, but of infinite, intimate expressions of it that help compose any physical form. That is the basis of existence. I have one other point to mention. Apropos, our session regarding the two men. Well noted, see the deleted session for me of April 18, 1979. She said you get in trouble only when you identify too strongly with the socially inoculated man, so that you can say with my beliefs, I do not think I can learn to put practice in Framework 2. The "my" there in that sentence refers to the socially inoculated man. The other man has no difficulties at all in that regard, and that man is you, too. You could at least ask his opinion. Rob said, well, I reread that section often. Nearly every day, I might have added. They said, that is why I add this to that material. I want you both to remember that you are learning a new kind of orientation, and the ideas directly opposed to those with which you were inoculated. So, do not blame yourselves for inadequacies. Do not disapprove of yourselves. Do not compare yourselves to what you think you should do or be. In a capsule, self-disapproval. In a capsule, comparing yourself to what you think you should be, and largely because of troubles with communication. You wanted to communicate love of our work, and instead you felt that you could only communicate resentment at what you felt had been done to it. You felt like a victim. The session should help you understand that you are not a victim. There is much more, however, about the interactions of people in such events. I hope to make it all as clear as I can, because I want you to understand the nature of events and your participation in them, and that of others. If you want, make a list of questions that you want to ask. Remember, however, to concentrate now upon, say, Prentice's feelings are an exercise in active meditation, in active suggestion. So try, each of you, to avoid that. This session can help, particularly if you make comparisons yourselves along these lines between the private creative event and the mass one. Do you have questions? Rob said, well, I guess I'll wait. They said, and in all cases, your main concentration should always be upon your daily accomplishments, joys, the domestic meal, the hour of dawn or twilight, or whatever. That is highly important, for concentration upon negative experiences helped make you ill. Rob said, I was wondering why I picked on the urinary tract. They said, I have given some material on that before, and it all applies, as given, to contradictions in your own beliefs between the male as breadwinner and the male as artist. There are, I believe, several sessions dealing with that. Rob said, I reread them too, in Book 20. They said, in this case, there was also the belief that there was a lack in the flow of communication, a blockage in the flow of creativity. So tell yourself that your creative ventures can flow through you easily and will. When you are upset, ask the creative man what he thinks. End of session, and a fond good evening. Rob said, thank you, said good night.